Welcome to Worldview Matters, discussing controversial issues, discerning current events, defending biblical Christianity. No topic off limits. And now, here's your host, David Fiorazzo.
Hello, friends. God bless you. Thanks for watching, for sharing the podcast, and for your prayers. Can't wait to jump in to this show with our new guest. It's Pastor Tom Hughes. Now, we've been trying to connect for like a year. Finally, we got him. He's the founder of Hope for Our Times, and he also founded 412 Churches. He's been teaching the Bible and Bible prophecy for over 30 years. Yes, he's one of those guys, troublemakers that dives into Bible prophecy. And he has a unique gift for helping people understand what the Bible calls the last days. He shares daily prophecy updates on the Hope for Our Times website, and that is hopeforourtimes.com. They've got an app you can download, YouTube channel, and he regularly appears on a variety of TV, radio, internet programs, World News Briefing on his channel. He's the host of the Tom Hughes Report and best-selling author of 3 books, and he lives in Southern California. He travels all over the place. He's a busy man, so we're so thankful for his time today. Tom, welcome to Worldview Matters, brother. Good to see you.
David, this is great. Finally get to connect with you.
I know.
This is so cool.
I know. Awesome. So we, before we jump in, I want to just mention your books because we'll talk a little bit about each one, have you just explain the most recent, Marking the Masses, and you can get that over on Amazon, doing very well, 5-star ratings over there. So make sure to check that one out, friends. We're going to be talking a little bit about that. And also I want to mention another book, America's Coming Judgment, Where is Our Hope? And you can go to the Amazon.com, look up Thomas J. Hughes, Tom Hughes, Hope for Our Time. So, brother, I wanted to talk about YouTube real quick because that's one of the outlets that we post on, and it's been censoring Christians and conservatives for quite a few years. I've got proof. Just the podcast 2 days ago, actually last week, I did a show, and this is really disappointing because it was a 2-part show, one of the very rare podcasts I do where I do not have a guest. The first half, I just did a personal update on my wife's health. I lost my mother recently. Praise God, she's with the Lord, but it's been really hard going up there, taking care of her house, all the stuff. But I've been talking about joy. And when Jesus said, in this world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And the hope that we have, that it's an anchor to our soul. So that was the first half of the podcast. And then the second half, I talked about some recent news stories, one of which was Pfizer being sued by 6 different states for misrepresentation of the C-19er shot. And so that got me pulled off YouTube immediately a couple days ago for that podcast. So yeah, tolerance, right? So I just want to mention to people, you can see that on Rumble. Go to my Rumble channel, go to the FreedomProject Rumble channel. You can see that. I encourage you to watch it and share it because there's some very important information on media bias. I call it the one-party big tech media conglomerate that censors and suppresses free speech. Tom, your thoughts on that? I know you've been affected by this to some degree as well. And this is just the state we're living in now in America, the intolerance of the biblical worldview and free speech. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you know what is amazing is there really isn't any censorship. At least that's what I was told by certain people, maybe on the left. Listen, it's absolutely absurd. In fact, the censorship really didn't take off until, let's say, the Biden regime came into power. That's when I started experiencing it. And but it's true. And here's the thing when it comes to the Bible and censorship is the world can't handle the truth. The world being those who are against Christ. They can't handle the truth. So we think of what Jesus said regarding the last days in Matthew chapter 24. He said, many will be offended because of me. I look and go, you cannot not offend somebody now. But the censorship is off the charts. We know we have an election that's coming up here in the near future. At least we're assuming there's going to be an election. But the censorship, now what we do is we self-censor because we're looking and going, okay, I don't want to be cut off on this or deleted here. I got to make sure my app is still, my program is still up or whatever. But it also has forced us to create other platforms,
yes,
or to be on other platforms, because quite frankly, we have to.
yeah.
But even when you look at that, the biggest platforms are obviously Google and YouTube, and they do control these things, and they're controlled by the leftists.
Yeah. It's interesting that they preach tolerance, but they are some of the most intolerant when it comes to Christians. And I don't notice them censoring other people, other religions, isms, cults, and other things, and other wacko beliefs. But anyway, this is to be expected. Mm-hmm. So, Tom, we're trying to use whatever outlets are available to us to get the gospel out, to get people saved first and foremost, to then hopefully get people saved that are in churches and professing Christians, or so-called Christians. And then, of course, we're trying to reach the world, but we're also trying to get the truth out and just inform people on what's going on. And that's been very hard because of what you said. What I got the notice from YouTube, it said your content was removed due to a violation of our community guidelines. But the type of people that can have put their videos on YouTube and the type of demonic content, and you're looking at that going, wow, they allow this. So times have changed. This is what we have to deal with. So your encouragement to people who are watching and listening that do have social media, every one of us has a sphere of influence. Not everybody has a church or a big stage or platform, but we can use what we can, the gifts that we've been given, to hopefully get the truth out. Your encouragement to those who have been disappointed, maybe have backed off a little bit because they don't want to deal with the potential censorship or just being canceled.
Yeah, the first thing to keep in mind is there was no such thing as a fact checker until the truth started getting out. So don't forget that. So when we look at it, though, I look at myself. I'm discouraged sometimes. I'm sure you are too. I started being deplatformed probably about a year and a half ago. Now I have a very difficult time getting my information out there if it's not on other platforms that are more friendly to me, including my own. But with that is, do whatever little bit that you still can. The devil would love you to quit. This is what the left would love you to do. They would love to just get you to the point where you're so intimidated or so discouraged that you won't do anything. Listen, that is not of the Lord. So you do what you can, and maybe you have a platform and you're only reaching 500 people, maybe at the most. Keep doing it anyways, because that's 500 more than zero. And whatever platform you possibly can, but then you also find the ones that are more friendly. Go to the ones that are more friendly. Right now, X is obviously more friendly than it was when it was Twitter. So you find these things and you realize you go there. But whatever you do, don't quit, because we have the hope, we have the truth, and just as you said, David, the most important message we have is the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. And this is something that the devil does not want out there. And these people, they're always going to be against us. There's going to be scoffers, mockers in the last days. You cannot let those things bother you. You understand the spirit where those things come from, and we press forward.
So, Tom, you've got a conference coming up, the End of the World Conference. I just want to mention some names because we've had them on this podcast. Actually, there's a couple that I'm going to be speaking with, but we've had Jeff Kinley, Brandon Holthaus, Bill Federer. I'll be talking to him in a few hours, Seth Gruber, and I'm going to be talking to Todd Hampson. So tell us about this amazing sounding conference coming up in November, and how can people get information on it?
It's called The End of the World, and it's going to be an absolutely terrific conference. We're still probably going to add a few more speakers to the list, but we're developing it. It's going to be huge, and it's going to be a 412 church in Temecula, California. And there are actually good things that come out of California. There's also bad stuff, but there is a lot of light that is shining here. It's going to be absolutely terrific, but it's going to be following the heels of the general election. So the general election is on that Tuesday, and then come Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we have the End of the World conference. In fact, one of the speakers that's joining us, we have Jeff Morgan that we're flying over from Israel. His first time coming to one of our conferences. Allison Steinberg, formerly of OAN News. She's going to be joining us. She is no longer on OAN News because she was too conservative, I guess.
Jeez, really?
I'm yes, it's absolutely true. She thinks like you do, is what it is. She's sharp. She thinks she came out of, get this, David, she came out of Hollywood. She was doing makeup on A-listers in the heart of Hollywood. 2020 rolls around. She goes, what is all the craziness? She starts searching for answers. She gets saved. She's Jewish. She's now a believer in Jesus, who's Jewish. She's smart. She's young and very conservative.
Awesome.
She'd fit right in on these programs. I mean, going with everything. She calls out everything, and they get tired of it. And
well, I'm going to have to see if I can connect with her through you. What a great story. I was in Hollywood. I lived out there for 17 years. I did a little bit of acting and just ended up moving to the Midwest. But tough business. And when I was out there, there was still tolerance about 25 years ago for the Christian faith and the biblical worldview. Not anymore. But so anyone that's in that industry, kudos. I want you to encourage Seth Gruber to tell people what he really thinks when he speaks at that conference. He's funny. We just had him on. And Olivier Melnick, he's his brother. Yeah. He's going to be back on the podcast here in a couple of weeks. So what's interesting about that, Tom, as a speaker, looking at that coming up after the November election, assuming we will have a November election, I would guess some of the speakers will be tweaking what they had planned to talk about depending on what happens. Your thoughts on that. There's so much speculation. You talked to J.B. Hickson recently. You've got a podcast coming out with him, Not by Works. I talked with him just before you did, and we were talking about, I don't think it's going to be Kamala Harris. I know, I just don't think she's likable enough, electable. I think they can put almost anybody in there, a mannequin with a D by their name, and that will be more popular and have a better chance of being marketed to the people. Your thoughts on the election, how this thing might play out.
In my mind, there's no way it's going to be Kamala. They're raising incredible amounts of money right now, trying to put the spin on that Kamala is like the Virgin Mary. I mean, it's just totally absurd. There's enough stupid people out there to believe it. Am I allowed to say stupid on your program?
Yes, sure are.
Okay, yep. Good, because there are some stupid people out there. I personally believe she's one of them. It amazes me that she even made it through school, but when you find out how she made it through school, I guess it's not such a surprise.
Good point.
But with her, I can't believe it. So my guess is she's absolutely unwinnable. And my guess is they're going to do the I think, as I told JB, it's like the Harrison Ford thing from Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know, when you had the crystal ball or whatever it was that was there, you had to switch it out with a bag of sand. And that's what they're going to do with Kamala. You know, they've already switched out Biden's head with Kamala's head. Now they got to switch out Kamala's head with the next one. My guess is that they're going to do something like a Michelle Obama, because there are so many people who just hate Trump. They'll just vote for anybody, but they can't vote for Kamala is what their problem is. But they'll vote for anybody else. The other thing I just want to caution people on is if this election goes to the Democrats, this is my personal belief. I'm convinced I'm right on this. We pretty much have lost abortion forever. We've lost everything related to gender and the school issues. The Department of Education obviously is totally corrupt, full of Marxists. The LGBTQ community, we're looking at Israel. Kamala Harris and these people who run her are some of the most anti-Semitic people that are in the entire country. So you look at the things that you would support, pro-life, pro-marriage, pro-Israel, those things are gone. I mean, this might sound like a fear tactic. I'm just telling you. All you have to do is read what they say and listen to what they say. Yeah. I mean, there's this, right now, even under the Biden administration, when you look at Israel, it's Amos Hochstein. He's been the liaison for the Biden administration, meeting with the Hezbollah leaders in Lebanon, and he's been negotiating with Israel. He's an Israeli Jew, right? But he's not favorable to Israeli Jews or Israeli policy. So he meets with these leaders of Hezbollah in Lebanon, and I say, praise God that they killed the one guy, and the other guy and whoever else by now. But he meets with him, and here's the deal: he makes an offer to Israel. Hey, you guys will be able to get the hostages released, and you'll stop having rockets from Hezbollah if you just stop pushing further into Gaza. So this has been going on for a few months. Well, they're saying, no, we're not going to stop pushing into Gaza. Well, then therefore, you're still going to have the rockets coming from Hezbollah. This is absolutely awful. This is evidence that the United States is not just green-lighting Hezbollah to do what they want. They're making sure that they continue to do what they want against Israel, using it as leverage against Israel for Israel to submit to U.S. policy. Unbelievable to have this going on.
Yeah, it is unbelievable, but this is where we are. We've got so much more to talk about with Pastor Tom Hughes when we come back on Worldview Matters. Keep it right here.
Today's show is brought to you by Harbinger's Daily, world news biblically understood. Stay informed at harbingersdaily.com.
Friends, if you know anyone who might be interested in sponsoring Worldview Matters, we are very thankful for Harbinger's Daily, Patriot Mobile, Freedom Project Academy. Give us a holler. So you can send an email to worldviewmatters@fpeusa.org or go to our website, worldviewmatters.tv, and let us know about sponsorship. But Tom Hughes, let's jump over to your book. Unless you want to just talk a little bit more, in fact, let's do that before we get to Marking the Masses and talk a little bit about what that book is about. I'm sure Revelation 13, but let's talk a little bit more about Benjamin Netanyahu and the fact that Kamala Harris didn't even show up when he was speaking to Congress. And isn't she the head over the Senate, not just VP, but doesn't she have a responsibility? And so anyway, you mentioned anti-Semitism, and it's been off the charts in America, on our college campuses, in our government. Just your thoughts on what happened when Netanyahu visited and what you see going on going forward.
Well, I would say it certainly isn't a shock with Kamala Harris. There's a lot of information out there. She was raised by commie parents. She's brought up with Willie Brown in the politics here in California. All of her schooling, all of this stuff, it was all related to these radical organizations, even connected with Barack Obama and these different things. So although she's definitely not intelligent. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that one. But she still is exceptionally radical, and she hates Israel. So if we go back, remember when Obama was president and Netanyahu came out to speak, Obama wouldn't even shake Netanyahu's hand, wouldn't even greet him at the White House. There's none of that. He's coming to Congress. It was just totally ridiculed, laughed at, mocked. But he spoke before Congress, and how many of the leftists would not even show up for that, including Obama and his clan? Okay, so we look at that, and you look at her. She's every bit as bad, if not even worse, because she's more manipulatable, or whatever you want to call it, by her handlers. So she hates Israel. Yeah. She hates them as much as the squad hates Israel. So it's no surprise at all to any of us that she wouldn't show up for Netanyahu. But this should, for anybody who actually thinks Kamala Harris would be nice, or whatever administration is coming after this one is going to be nice toward Israel, you better wake up, because I promise you they will not. This is getting so strange, David. I mean, so strange. I hope nobody misunderstands me. But could you imagine that we could be looking back and thinking on the good old days of Biden when all he did was eat ice cream? I mean, that is a frightening thing, because he was just absolutely evil and awful. But 2 Timothy chapter 3 does tell us that in the last days, evil men will wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. Yes. So this will go that way. However, the next verse says, but you, brethren, remember your start in the Holy Scriptures. Do not depart from those things. But the world is going to go this way. The evil men, the Bible tells us, will wax worse and worse. So it's no surprise we go from Obama to Obama 3.0, or whatever it was with Biden, to what we got now with cackling Captain Kamala, to whatever we're going to come out with in November. But I personally think it'll end up being Michelle or whoever when it comes to November, and it will not be friendly towards Israel.
No, I said that very same thing on J.B. Hickson's podcast the other day. I think it's going to be Michelle Obama. She's would be the ultimate candidate they could idolize. But Tom, we know they're anti-Semitic. We know if you go to the platform and you go to the policies, you look at the biblical worldview, what the Bible teaches, it's clear to see it's demonically driven, what their policies entail and their ideologies. And yet I think there's some ignorance out there with people. Let's just take the life subject real quick. And I keep saying we're going to get to marking the masses, but people can go to Amazon, check that out. Well, we'll give Tom a couple minutes to just describe that book in a minute. But Tom, we're concerned about that. Most of us are pro-life, meaning at conception, not at any stage of pregnancy. But it seems like their platform is almost, well, it is demonic, but it's almost like they have a bloodlust, and it is murder of the preborn. And there's not enough believers, I think, speaking out about this and defending life. What are your thoughts on that? It's just such a big issue that they're not talking about. I think they're avoiding that.
Yeah, they want to avoid it. It's too controversial. David, pastors won't even talk about this.
Yes,
pastors and churches that claim, I believe that the Bible's true. They won't even talk about it. So it's no wonder politicians won't. But in fact, one of the reasons I've invited Seth Gruber to come out and speak at our End of the World conference is I asked him to connect the dots, and he does it so well with the worship of Molech, with where we are now. We are literally sacrificing babies to Satan. That is really what's happening in the abortion industry. It's baby sacrifice to Satan. And people go, that's just, how could you say such a thing? All right, well, what is it then?
Yeah.
You're not terminating a pregnancy. It was even Bill Maher, the leftist, who admits, who actually is thinking a lot more than so many other people now, which is amazing to see. Maybe he'll come to Christ. But watching him recently is in a conversation about abortion with somebody out of Hollywood, some lady, and she was talking about abortion, and Bill Maher says, it's murder. It's murder. He said it. Now, he said he still supports it, but at least he got that part right. He admitted it was murder, and he was actually challenging the people who support abortion who can't admit that. Because it is murder, although I still support it. But this is sacrificing a baby to Satan. So it's the worship of Molech. Call it whatever you want. I've been over to Israel many times, and you drive across the Hinnom Valley. In fact, the His Channel TV studios is on the one side of the Hinnom Valley, and the other side is the old city. You're looking down at it. This is where you have the baby sacrifices during the wicked kings of Judah. They would go down there and sacrifice them.
Wow.
To Molech, on the arms of Molech. But yeah, that's what this is sacrifice to Satan.
Yeah, we don't know our history. And they've done a great job. Evil, The Marketing of Evil. There's a great book David Kupelian wrote years ago, The Marketing of Evil. The left has done a great job changing the language. It's not a baby. It's reproductive freedom. It's choice. It's whatever else they're calling it. We're terminating a pregnancy, not a baby. Anyway, Tom, so Marking the Masses, your book you wrote about a year ago, it's a wake-up call to both believers and unbelievers alike regarding an agenda that was set in motion, you say, in 1961. Give us a little sneak peek for those that have not purchased or read the book.
Yeah, well, what led me to write the book was a conversation I had with my dad, and my dad's still alive. He turns 94 here, coming up shortly. And but I've had this conversation many times over the years, and he was living in Los Angeles at the time with my mom. I was only a couple years old, and he worked in an industry. It was the tech industry of the time. He worked for a company called Teledyne, and it was a very small corporation at the company at the time. And he was hired on because he had his master's degree in chemistry, and they need someone who could connect, it was whatever was necessary to create the silicon wafer, now known as silicon chips in Silicon Valley. So with that, he was invited to a party in Hollywood, down overlooking the basin below, the valley down below. and it was some bigwigs. It was from guys from Hewlett Packard and these different companies. And he said there are a bunch of these men there, including his partners in Teledyne. And somebody came up to him, put his arm around him, and he said, "You see all these people down here, Jim? Lights were shining and everything." He goes, "Someday we are going to control every single one of them." And my dad said at the time it just sent chills up his spine. Because he said most of the people that he worked with, Henry Singleton, George Kometsky, and others who became very well known in the industry leading up to Silicon Valley, he said most of them had good intentions. And he said, he goes, but when that was mentioned to me, they're going to control all of these people down here. He goes, I sensed there were no good intentions coming from that person. And the things he was working on, they were great projects to help the world, to help us to be able to communicate. He's talked about cell phones and all these different things back in 1961, 62, 63. And so that launched. I did a recording with my dad a few years ago, sat down with him. Dad, I need all the names. I need to get all this on record so I have it. So I recorded it, and I talked with one of my friends that's a publisher, and I said, hey, I'm going to turn this into a book. Would you be interested? And he said, well, let's see how it goes. So that became the foundation of it. And then, obviously in the book, I don't just deal with technology. I deal with culture, the wokeism, how we got here. I go back in history and connect all these dots that take us to Revelation chapter 13. But I wrote it, David, with the intent to not just strengthen the understanding of the believer, but to really reach the non-believer. So I didn't want it to come across like a religious book. I want it's based on facts. You can read it and connect with it. But I really wanted the non-believer to go, oh man, wow, this is interesting. I need to look at this. And then what does the Bible actually say? So that was my hope in writing
awesome.
the book.
So guys, you can go to Amazon, Marking the Masses, 5-star ratings. And it sounds fascinating, Tom. And a big word, control. And I hope, and I know you agree with me, that anyone watching or listening at this point, we are not naive to Satan's schemes and unaware of his schemes, that there is an agenda to control people, to control mankind, but it is being played out. We're seeing they're talking about it. But Tom, wish we had more time, but we will, Lord willing, do this again in the near future. Appreciate all you do and your voice, and may God enlarge your territory, brother. Thanks so much for being on Worldview Matters.
Right. Thanks for having me on, David. It was wonderful. Great to see you.
Yep. All right, guys, we've got so much more coming up. Some great guests the rest of this week. And I'm just so blessed to talk to who I get to talk to. It really encourages me, inspires me, keeps me going, even on those rough days when you're feeling a little beat up. But thanks again. God bless you. And as always, keep speaking the truth about things that matter.